Well, as I said before, Energy Minister Angus Taylor announced today that the Morrison government will spend $94 million on strategic fuel reserve buys, taking advantage of the current historic low fuel prices. My next guest, well, he's been campaigning for them to do just that for a long time. Joining me now, New South Wales Senator, the wonderful retired General Jim Mullen. Jim, about time, hey?
Yeah, it is about time, Peter, but I guess you would know more than anyone that, and I've learnt it slowly over the last couple of years, that politics is all about the art of what's possible. And I congratulate Angus Taylor. I congratulate him seriously for the fact that he has taken significant steps forward today. A lot of us have been talking about this, Andrew Hastie, David Fawcett, myself, over a long period of time, previous ministers, but now it's happened, Peter, and it's happened to address two different kinds of scenarios. And if we mix those scenarios up, we don't see the advantage of what Minister Taylor has done. The first scenario, which the minister alluded to today, is all about where the 90% of the liquid fuel that we use as oil or as product that comes into Australia each day slows down. And we manage that. It might have, there might be a financial crisis in the Gulf, or there might be something in North Asia. Who knows what causes it to slow down, but it does slow down, but it is coming in. And that's where the minister has taken us a significant step forward by using the fact that oil is $10 a barrel at the moment, and he's buying $94 million worth of that oil and putting it into storage in the US. Why in the US? Because all our storages in Australia are full. Now, that's the first scenario. The second scenario is a more extreme scenario, and it's where our fuel, the flow of fuel into this country might be cut off. And I'd say there's kind of two reasons for that it might be cut off. One is financial. If you had a financial collapse throughout the world, because many of us think that oil tankers run on the water. I was told that oil tankers actually run on finance. So you could lose that because of finance. The second one is, of course, a widespread conflict. And if I'd said to you in the middle of last year, Peter, that there was going to be a virus that closed down the economy, no one would have believed us. But the probability, I would suggest, of conflict in the Gulf, in the South China Sea, or in a combination of the two, is at least as high, if not a damn sight higher, than we would have said that a virus was going to close down our economy last year. And what the minister has done in relation to that, I think, is very, very good as well. We can't bring that oil back to Australia.
Let me just jump in there with a couple of questions.
Yep.
Let's talk about storage. How long would it be, or how long would it take us to build our own significant additional storage in Australia for oil? At the moment, yes, we will store it in the United States, but there's a lot of discussion about how much we need to build up here in Australia. And what's the shelf life or storage life of oil? Is there an end date that we have to use it by to replenish stocks?
Well, oil is stored in the ground for 1 billion years, of course. Once we pull it out of the ground and put it into tanks or into mines, as the US does, we could store it for an indefinite period of time. Product is different. Product that is refined petrol, diesel, or aviation fuel, you really need to turn it over every year or so. So that really decides that it's a pretty sophisticated activity. So bringing it back to Australia, and you could build temporary storages relatively fast, within 6 months to a year. More permanent storages, and that's for product. More permanent storages, you'd have to find the correct place to store oil around the place. But this is what the minister said he will start doing now, and that's
okay. Refining capacity
where we're cut off.
Refining capacity to take the oil to product, that's also a challenge in Australia nowadays, probably more than it was in the past, I suspect.
Yes, it is. But the fact that we have acknowledged that we're buying crude and putting it in the US means that there is no way in the world can we go below the minimum level of what we've got at the moment for refining in Australia. We have got to be able to refine in Australia. If we're going to bring this oil back to Australia at some stage, we've got to refine in Australia. And a lot of people say, nah, get rid of the refineries. You can buy it cheaper out of Asia. Well, that's fantastic. And the market has never delivered us security in this area or any other area. And the minister has intervened in the market and is buying fuel for exactly that reason.
Your comment there about the hardhead saying, you know, you can get refined fuel cheaper offshore. Why have refineries here? It's a bit like the same hardheads who said, why manufacture PPE and masks and pharmaceutical inputs in Australia anymore? Just import them from overseas, from India and China, so much cheaper. Well, I think one of the things out of coronavirus, even though this is a very distinct and different industry than health, I think the lessons we saw in health out of coronavirus will permeate the broader security posture.
That's exactly right. And this is what I believe, that once we come out of it, once we're consolidated and coming out of COVID, this is the issue that we need to address. And everyone's talking, particularly amongst our leadership, is talking about sovereignty, self-reliance, self-sufficiency, resilience. But we've got to give meaning to those words. Now, coming out of COVID is a different thing than having medium-term or longer-term resilience, sovereignty, self-reliance. But we all know, Peter, that we can't produce everything in Australia. It's pointless to talk about it. We've got to stay engaged, but at some stage we've got to decide what the minimum level of pharmaceuticals, of fertiliser, of fuel, and 100 other things that we produce in Australia. And then on top of that, we trade with the world and buy cheaper from the world. That's going to require government to do a lot of thinking and a lot of work on that.
Yeah, well, I hope it's already underway, Jim. I've got to ask you, South Korean officials, they've downplayed the reports that we ran last night that the North Korean leader Kim Jong-un was in grave danger after, we're told, heart surgery.
Yes, and I've seen nothing more today apart from their denial that it's grave. I guess we've got to be very careful what we wish for. The man is totally unpredictable. He's been punching off medium-range missiles into the sea to impress people now on and off for the last couple of months. But if he goes, then who do we end up with? Do we end up with his sister? Do we end up with a general? Do we end up with a purge through the country? This is a dangerous time if he is sick or if he's not sick. And I guess we've just got to be very careful what we wish for.
Yeah, as erratic as he is, he's an erratic but known quantity. Thank you very much for your time, Jim Mullen.